Well, hello there again, friends. Today is 2/16/2022, and today is Odin Project Vlog Day 63. And we're on section number 3, create a basic HTML calculator with buttons for each digit, each of the above functions, and an equals key. Sub 1, do not worry about wiring up the JS just yet. 2, there should also be a display for the calculator. Go ahead and fill it in with some dummy numbers so you can get it to looking right. And sub 3, add a clear button. So, I approached this with Flexbox in mind. Um, you know what a standard calculator looks like, but you know, here's native Windows calculator. But I tried doing this with Flexbox and getting that keypad to work was a literal nightmare. Let's just put it that way. I was trying to mimic all the digits to be in the same order with the 0 down here, and I had tried to do the operators on this side, and it was not working. I struggle bus that for much of the night last night, and so I threw that idea away, and I went out and, admittedly, because I'm never gonna lie to you guys, I went out and did some Googling and searching around the internet, and I ended up stumbling upon it appeared to be, or basically looks like, one of the old top students from like 2 years ago. They had done this exercise, and I was like, okay, well, I'm guessing they're probably using grid, because anytime you see a bunch of buttons this close together like that is probably grid. So I took a quick peek at his style sheet and seen grid, and that's all I needed to see. I knew that I needed to use grid, and just like with Etch-a-Sketch, we don't have a lot of experience with it, and as I mean me, because we've not went over it yet, and I went back in previous lessons just to make sure that actually is the case and it is true. We've not been over it, and grid is in the the Node.js section after Foundations is over. So we have not covered it yet. So I gave myself some grace, right? So I went ahead and I grabbed that old student's code, and inadvertently, while I was looking at CSS, I seen all his other stuff. So basically, I just grabbed it all. So in full transparency, the CSS and the way the structure of the HTML bones is laid out is not mine. But I did take the time to go through it to make sure I understood it. So we're gonna go over it now. Again, there's different flavors. There's different ways to do this. I purposefully commented out a few things that he had that I didn't want to use / not going to. Like, he had a button in there for percent change value, converting percent decimal to percent or whatever. I commented that out, as you can see here on the button class, and I commented out on the CSS at the bottom. He had it here, and we'll go through this here. But I commented out because I'm not going to use. I don't have a JS function for percent, and I didn't want to create one. So that's where I deviate away. So I deviate away from that, and then I also change the colors to my liking, and I changed the flex of the flex of one of the boxes to make it longer. We'll go through that. So starting out with the CSS or the HTML, we have a main ID of calc, and then that's wrapped inside of that with a div called ID container. And inside ID container, you have every single. Let me just get rid of this for a second. There we go. You'll see every single button under the container, and then inside here also you have an embedded div for display, and I put in 100 in there just to have some text output as per the instructions here for dummy text, so you can see what it looks like on the screen. Again, we're not wiring up any JavaScript, so there's no JavaScript today. It's just purely visual design today. So here's all the buttons. It's actually pretty self-explanatory, the HTML. Um, the data key, if you guys remember, I don't know if we went over it in a video, but we talked. One of the articles talked about data key. Oh no, it was the JavaScript dude, the JavaScript 30 dude. Was used data key to map out his keyboard. Excuse me, for keyboard support. And so that's what that is. So each keybind is mapped to a number, and you can mimic what he has, or you can use a website to get the value. That's part of the bonus section that's at the bottom, very bottom of the exercise actually. I don't know if I'll end up using this, but since it's there, I probably will, but that's the keyboard support. And so essentially what that does is that maps it so that you can press the key on the keyboard and it will press the button, essentially mapping it. So, and the values, that's just the initial value of the button, finds the value associated with the button, which is submitted from the form data. This value is passed to the server in params when the form is submitted. That isn't important now, but it'll probably become important later when we go back to wire up our JS to this. So we have type button, classes. Okay, so basically the operands are the numbers. The operator is the division, multiplication, subtraction, addition. And that's basically it. And then we have a 0 button here. And essentially it. So I won't belabor that anymore. Let me bring up the double pane here. And I always hate doing this because I can always get it backwards here. Put the style sheet over here. And we'll go through this. Actually, I probably should just... Yeah. That's okay. We'll do this because we may need to look at both. It's hard to do this when it's blown up for you guys, so pardon me if I'm moving around a little bit. But so here we go. So at the top you have HTML, text align center, and font family monospace, and that is going to be applied to the entire page. That's HTML is at the highest level, so that'd be commenting on or adding CSS to that tag. Then we have a pound calc, which is ID calc main here, and it's a display of flex, min height of 95 VH, justify content center, align content center, and if you remember all this from our Flexbox series, this essentially just centers everything on the page. And then we have a minimum height defined because we don't want to have allows authors to constrain content height to a certain range, and we want to do that because we don't want it, if I remember right, we talked about this in a previous video. If you don't want your browser to auto your minimums, you have to put a value in there. And that's basically we're basically saying we don't want it to go below 95 VH. And also same for height. We don't want it to go above 100 VH. So it's going to kind of frame it for us. Overflow is hidden. I talked about that extensively in a previous video, so I won't go over the overflow here, but essentially it's spillage outside of that div. So there will be hidden spillage outside of the main calc if there is any. Go back and watch a couple videos ago if you want more in-depth discussion on that. Background color as Azure, and that's just basically to show you what I got here. That's basically this light blue background. So this is what it looks like basically. There's no JS wired to this, so the buttons don't do none of the buttons do anything except, some fancy CS stuff or CSS, excuse me. So we'll go over that now, and then this is just a static 100.00 I put in here just so I can see what it looks like. And that's where you're getting it from right here, the 100. And then so moving down, we have a pound container, which takes on the ID container right here. And that div contains all the display and basically every single button. And so that container, which is essentially this outside the containers, this entire DevTools will help us. What am I doing here, guys? Okay, so I've got it blown up so you can't really see it too much. But so ID container is the entire calculator essentially. So it has background color of black. Sorry, my Tourette's is active today. Woo! Border of 10 pixels, solid with the RGBA 47, 47, 47, 1. Border radius is 4 pixels, so that's the width of the border, and it's a display grid. And then this is where it gets kind of weird. So again, we've not been over this at all outside of Etch-a-Sketch. We've not learned this though in the materials. So when you do display grid, you need to do template rows and columns. I went over this extensively though in the Etch-a-Sketch probably video 1, maybe 2. So go back there if you want an in-depth discussion about min-max, why we have to use that, and what the repeat does. But long story short, these two, the grid columns and rows, basically creates the it's basically a loop, if you will, for lack of a better term, and it creates all the buttons inside of here. So it creates all the buttons that you see here. I know it's kind of cut off, but all the buttons that are here are created through that width and height. So it's got a column of 4 and a repeat of 5 on the rows. So column is 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the row. And that's how you get that. Gap of 2 is exactly what it sounds. That's the gap in between each button, but the gap is filled in by the border radius. Going down, we have display, and this is the display at the top of the calculator. We have a grid column, which we've not been over this, and this was not an Etch-a-Sketch, so honestly I'm not even sure what this references. Shorthand for grid column start and grid column end. Okay, so it has basically where you're going to start and where you're going to stop your column. So whatever 1 dash -1 means, again, we've not covered this. So and there's your background color. It's a flex direction column, so we're going to be going vertical on this. Justify content, space around, which means we're placing space around the contents that are in this flex items, or creating space, even space around each one. Align items is flex end, which means we're going to the flex item, in this case the digits, are going to be all on the far flex end, which in this case, since we're columns, is going to be the far right end edge. So it's going to be this right here, all the way to the right, as a normal calculator should look. And we have padding. No news there. 5 pixels of padding. Font size 5.5 EM, which is just a way to calculate font size. Font weight initial. That's basically your boldness. Excuse me. And text shadow is exactly what it sounds. There's a shadow on the display text. So you see there's a little bit of shadow. My screen may not. I can see it on my monitor, but you may not see it on the YouTube video. But there's a small little shadow. And the margin is 5 pixels. So that's the space in between the text and the edge of the display. So right there, that where my cursor is, 5 pixels. So moving on, button here. How much time we got here? All right, 13 minutes already. So I'm gonna move a little faster. Button here, we have margin of 1 pixel, border radius of 5% in percent. You can do it by percent as well. No border. Font weight is initial. Font size 2 EM. The family is monospace, which is just the font type. And color is black. And that's basically defining all the buttons. So we're, excuse me again, my Tourette's is active. So we're calling the button here. So each button's getting that black and that border and the thickness, and the color will come below. So here is where we start the spanning. So here's where I start to deviate. I changed some of this around to my liking from what the other student had. So hashtag 0 is the 0 button, which is probably way down here. Yeah, I'm not gonna keep bouncing back because this is gonna waste time. But So this is the 0 button, has a grid column of span 2. So what that does, get rid of this for a second. There's zeros. So span 2 means the grid column span 2 means we're going to add 2 columns. So columns are up and down, right? So we're going to span it by 2. 1, 2. And that's why it goes over 2 columns. That's why it's wider like that. And if you notice in the plus or minus, I did the same thing. So if I bounce you down real quick here to the plus or minus, and it's called sign, or dot sign, there's your color background, and it has a span of 2 as well. A lot of these, this looks like a lot, but a lot of these are just color definitions. So the next one is operators. So that is all of the, like I said before, all of the buttons that are of value, that are, the operator is the multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. Those have a background color of 481 triple F, which that's these right here. And the focus, so when you have colon focus, what that does is that's the attribute that comes up when you click. So the focus will change to FFC 181 for background color when you click it. See? And it will stay there until you click something else, or the focus is shifted away from the previous button, basically. So if you hit anything else, you hit plus, you know, minus, whatever, another number, it'll go away. So once the focus is taken away, it'll be removed. And the same, I won't go through all these because it's the same iteration. The same thing for equals, the equal button, equal active, operand, operand active. So these are the numbers themselves. So they have a different scheme of color. And their difference, though, is that they are called colon active. So colon active is different than focus because active just is when you click it. See, it immediately disappears as soon as I let off the mouse button. So that's active, which is exactly what it sounds. So when it's active, and then it's done. So it's a quick little quick hit. Equals sign has that same attribute on it. And there's that. And all these are just duplication. They're just CSS'd out like that because they all have their unique value types, or class attributes, excuse me. So that's why they're all written out individually. But most of them have same properties or very similar properties. And then like I said earlier, I commented out percent. The original student had a percent in there, which I'm not going to evaluate in mine, since I didn't have it in my JS. I just have the add, subtract, multiply, divide, so I took that out. So originally the percent was right here. So what I did was I manipulated the plus minus to be a span. So that's what I did here. He didn't have this here, so I added this myself so I could cover it up, because if you don't, you have basically a button there that doesn't do anything because I don't have a percent function, and like I said, I didn't plan on building it out. So this looks good. I like the look of it. It's not perfect, but I'm not looking for perfection here. I changed all the color schemas to colors that I liked. Yeah, it's a little bland. I probably could change it up a little bit more, and I might, but it's good here. And that's it. So I won't make this video any longer. And that's completes the third section here. Adding the basic HTML. So next time we'll be creating a function to pop a display when you click the number button. So we're going to start doing a little bit of wiring up of the JavaScript to it. So hope you guys enjoyed today and learned a little bit along the way with me coming along on the journey today. Please like, share, and subscribe for more content, and let me know in the comments what do you think of the exercise so far and how you're coming along with CSS and your knowledge on step 3 and your knowledge of grid. Have you went a step farther than me, and have you went out and took the time to learn grid prior to learning it in top, or are you just taking a more of a passive approach like me and just doing what's needed until you can learn it officially in the program? But with all that said, until next time, see ya.